and welcome to our last episode of Quarantine Art Chats. Today we have a very special guest, Simona Weinstein, a creative psychotherapist from Melbourne, Victoria and founder of Indigo Art Therapy. Simona has a wealth of knowledge and experience working with adults and children alike, helping people to unpack and understand many of life's fears, traumas and struggles in a holistic and creative way. She's kindly taken the time to chat with us today about the COVID crisis and help us wrap up these chats with some ideas on how to manage this unprecedented time in history. So thank you so much for joining us today, Simona.
It's my pleasure, my pleasure.
So firstly, how are you coping with the whole COVID experience? Because of course you're in Melbourne City. Have you been safe and well?
Yes, thank you for asking. I have been safe and well. I'm wearing my mask. We've got sanitizer in every nook and cranny in the house. We've got Glen 20 all over the place. And I have oodles and oodles and oodles of textures and pencils and craft all around me everywhere. If you would see my desk in front of me, it's absolutely chockers with drawings and etc. etc. So I'm doing a lot of drawing. And I think most importantly also, I'm not exposing myself to the news.
Yeah.
I might be checking in the morning for a second, checking in the evening for a second. The minute I see the word COVID, I just scroll straight down and see if there's anything else that I need to see. And I limit myself on social media because I just find that it creates this whole parallel universe and I just push it all aside. And I know that it is hard out there and I know that there are a lot of people doing it really tough. And my first bit of advice is please, please, please try and shut down a lot of the social media and a lot of the news and get yourself into a space where you are feeling expansive and not contracting and you are feeling joy and you are tapping into yourself a little bit more. Yeah. I set a monthly plan of goals that I want to target and tick off, and they're not massive. It's not a huge list. It's probably about 3 things for the whole month. Of course, they can be broken down into smaller bits and pieces, but I think it gives me a little bit of focus and a little bit of direction, and it gives a sense of purpose as well. And I think when we wake up in the morning, for those that are out of work and are struggling a little bit, particularly not with families around them, and they don't have all those kids that they're trying to homeschool, but it's much more quiet in their home, I think a sense of purpose is super important to be able to realign our thoughts when we wake up in the morning. I think jumping out of bed and eating well and doing a bit of exercise, walking, whether it's a yoga on YouTube or it's a bit of higher end aerobics, something that's going to get your blood flowing a little bit. I think all of those things help us keep on the right track.
So true. It's so true. I know from my own experience, not being so absorbed in the news and having a routine is just massive. And I really underestimated until I was going through a difficult time. And then I realized actually the little things like getting up in the morning, putting on your makeup, getting dressed and ready for the day was just huge.
Yeah, exactly. Huge. There's a fantastic saying that I heard many years ago called dress smart, think smart. So even if you're going to be going from your bed to the desk in your bedroom, if you can change your clothes, it just puts you into a different headspace. And there is a very opportune moment in the morning that the minute you wake up, if you jump out of bed, you're energized. If you stay in your bed at that point and roll over and look at your phone, roll over and put your hand under your pillow and go to sleep again, you tend to get sloshy. And that's the point where it's harder to get out of bed. But if you can jump out the minute you feel that, oh, I'm awake, that's the point you've got to jump out of bed.
I know that point because that's the point that my lovely 30-kilo puppy comes in and wants cuddles. And if she convinces me that she absolutely requires cuddles at that point in the morning, my whole day sort of goes downhill from there.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
I'm going to get up, I'll make a coffee and then we can have cuddles on the couch and at least I'm up and I'm out of bed.
Exactly. Yeah, and surround yourself with positive people. It's so important. Definitely. The people that you're around exude a vibration, they exude an energy. Surround yourself with positive people.
Yeah, I had a friend who told me that once because I've sort of grown up in an environment where I'm sort of in the mentality of assisting people, always put people first. But there's sort of a point, someone told me once, if you're inclined to do things for other people, you want to help other people, make sure that that amount of your energy is lesser than the amount of energy that you're putting in for yourself. So surrounding yourself with positive people, putting in that positive energy, and then having something to give out. Because if you put too much energy into giving, in terms of people that are maybe in a negative headspace or going through something difficult, you won't have enough to put back in the bank at the end of the day for yourself as well. So trying to find that balance is important.
100%. And you'll feel it. You'll feel it. The next day you'll be flatter. The next day you might start doubting yourself or second guessing yourself, or you might find yourself going down a little bit of a downward spiral. So it's really important to know that you've got X amount in your pot, X amount you're going to be able to give, but you've got to have that retainer for yourself.
Absolutely. So on a bit of a global scale, how do you think this COVID crisis has affected the arts community? Obviously, it's going to change the way that a lot of artists function. But I know that also I watched a movie a little while ago about art during the war times and how art changed during the war and how it became sort of a bit of a force for good afterwards. So on a bit of a global scale, how do you think that things are going to change moving forward?
Well, how they've changed to this point, I think what I'm noticing, what I'm loving actually, is the individualization of people's creations. So we're seeing them in their lounge rooms, or we're seeing them just on their own trying to work out what can they do with what they've got. So on the one hand, I feel like it's become a little bit more, it's become a lot more isolating. So people are doing their craft, but they're doing it on their own. I think in tandem, they're also finding more creative ways of expressing their mastery. So they could be playing the guitar, they could be painting, they could be whatever their creative modality is, they're doing it, but they're trying to find ways that can connect in with other people. So it's really expanding our brain to try and think, how can we do this and have the perception that it is a group activity, but at the same time, we're doing it on our own. So on the one hand, there's isolation, but on the other hand, it's really stretching ourselves to try and think outside the square. How can we make this work on a larger scale?
It's so interesting. I have a friend who wasn't able to get hold of a variety of the colour of paints that he was using for an art project. He could only get, I think, 2 colours. So he did a whole series of portraits with these 2 colours, and it was so interesting because they're not colours that you would normally put together or find. And he was very frustrated, but that frustration turned into something really beautiful. These portraits are magnificent, and he's very proud of them because they're just so different than what he would have done, but he just had to make do with what he had.
Well, I've got to tell you, Lara, it really touches a very personal point, because this afternoon I'm meant to be going and sourcing paints, Viridian greens and all these different things for my daughter who's doing VCE, and she's doing art. She's creating portraits. And I'm thinking, what are we going to do if all my local art shops are actually closed? We're going to have to work something out here. And it's a very, very real, tangible challenge that we're going to have to face this afternoon.
Yeah. But I think it opens doors to creativity that we wouldn't normally access.
No, exactly.
That lack of what we're able to get hold of.
And I think also on a global level, you know, we often hear about people saying, oh, I'm not good with change. No, I'm not doing that. Oh, I can't. No, that's not for me. Or I'm not spontaneous. And all of a sudden we're hearing ourselves repeating these old stories and thinking, one moment, it actually doesn't stick anymore, because we've got to change and we've got to be spontaneous and we've got to deal with the unknown in the universe. And it just makes it, I think, we're all learning little life lessons that can only make us more resilient and grow out of this, hopefully.
Absolutely. And really honing in on our values too.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, all of a sudden, chalking on the sidewalks, which I relate back to the 60s and 70s and 80s, or 60s and 70s, that's okay now. We can go and do that. It's the basics, it's the process, which is actually relates back really well to the concept of art therapy, because it's the process that we're going through as opposed to the end product with so many things that we're doing these days.
So obviously each person's circumstances are quite different. We've got people who still do have jobs in Melbourne, and they're also homeschooling, and they're in lockdown, and they don't have the sort of outlets that they normally have, like going to the bars with their friends or catching up for lunches and that sort of thing. So we've got a lot of people in that circumstance. And they're very at risk of burnout. And then we've got, on the other hand, people who might be out of work, who don't have kids to be homeschooling. They could be home on their own quite a lot more than usual, and are probably at a higher risk for depression. So what can people do in these different circumstances to avoid burnout or depression?
It's a great question, and you're right. The prevalence, it's just increasing. And as an art therapist, I would say that it's about getting out those art materials and drawing. You know, it's interesting. I was actually doing a session last week with a couple of people that are in isolation at the moment. So they've got no one around them. In quarantine. So we're all isolated pretty much from each other at the moment, particularly in Melbourne. But these people have just flown into another country, and they are in a basement in quarantine, no other connection whatsoever, but they have the internet. So I was able to connect with them, and we did, and it was just a half hour. We did, right, let's just map out, what are we feeling, draw out what are we feeling. I don't want to hear the words. I don't want to hear, let's move away from the left brain of all that thinking. Let's just go into the body and release the emotions that are stored inside of our muscles and inside of parts of our limbs that we just push down there because we have to function. And it was so releasing for them. So I think that is really, really important. I honestly can't stress enough how the drawing and the art, I believe, is just as important as getting out and going for a walk around the block, because you're tapping into a different part of your brain. You're tapping into part of the brain that is subconscious. We're not conscious to it. It's as simple as that. We're just not conscious to it. So we are illuminating our blind spots. And when we can tap into it and release from such a deep area, it will lift our mood, it will lift our game, and it makes us feel a little bit more positive. I also think because we are so blessed to have the technology, yes, a lot of people are zoomed out and they're over it. But if we have a screen of, 10 friends on Zoom, and we've got a Kahoot game to play on that Zoom, or we can just dance or do it to just, I don't know if you know the app or whatever it's called. My children will be very unimpressed with me right now, but I think it's about Just Dance or something like that, that we're all just getting up and moving together. That creates the same social engagement, the feelings, and increases all of our happy hormones the way we would do if we were face to face with somebody. So I would say keep on doing it, keep on engaging socially, even on Zoom. I think there's phenomenal online seminars and webinars that you can listen to. Again, discern what it is that you're going to expose yourself to, because there are people that will catastrophize, and there are people that will be a lot more negative, and they'll look at statistics. And yes, there's if you're happy, you're right, and if you're sad, you're right. It just really depends what choice you're going to make at that junction. So tap into the positive workshops and the seminars, and that could be on a business level, it could be on a disability level, it could be people talking about mental health podcasts just like yours as well. So I'm talking about creating positive energies around you. It could be art parties where somebody is standing there and guiding you through, this is how we're going to paint a portrait. And also, I know that with work not around the corner, when we don't have a job to get up to in the morning, hopefully there are some savings. And if I can just put a little bit of a financial thing in there, budget, just spend less than you earn, spend less than you earn, spend less than you earn. this won't last forever. It will turn around and it will come back. But if you can just keep a tab on what you're doing, we'll get through it. We will get through it.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. Sort of leads me to my next question. I think uncertainty has probably been the one thing that even over here in Perth, obviously we haven't had nearly what you guys are going through. But even over here, I find everyone I'm talking to, no matter how good or how difficult their circumstances is, it's the uncertainty that seems to be getting to people. How can we reframe our mindset to cope with the uncertainty ahead?
I think the first step is recognizing that we are uncomfortable. And why are we uncomfortable? We can only reframe once we've gone through those steps of acknowledgement and awareness. And awareness is always the beginning of change. Once we're aware what it is inside of us that's making us feel uncomfortable, not at peace, agitated, fidgety, wanting to buzz from one side to another and can't sit in space, then with that energy, then we can look at, okay, what's going on? When we realize, okay, I don't know what tomorrow's about. I don't know if I can plan a wedding ahead, a course ahead. I don't know if I can get to my partner or my family or my friends overseas. I don't know what I can do. I don't know if I can plan a work seminar face-to-face in the next month. I don't know what I'm going to do. Is it about just not knowing, or is it about I don't have control? And what is it? What do we feel when we don't have control? What are the times in our lives when we haven't had control? And what happened for us at that moment? And that might bring up things for us. And then have a look at what are the differences between those times that might have caused trauma, and they might have caused pain, and they might have caused sadness or grief or loss. And what is it in this situation that we don't know about, we don't have control? Are the levels of safety or lack of safety the same? And if they're not, let's look at the positives about what is different between those situations, and how can I sit with that level of not having that control? I have a roof over my head, I'm independent, or what are the differences? That's really important. And always as well to keep in mind that we think we have control, but it's a perception. It's always, we have this perceived control that makes us feel safe. But in actual fact, things happen in an instant. We can be walking down a street and it can happen. Our life can change in an instant. The rug can be pulled from under us at any time of the day or night, any time of the year. So right now, perhaps that lack of control is just a lot more apparent. And that's what's making us feel very uncomfortable. So remember that it is just a perception. And if that control makes you feel better, then let's find areas in our life that we do have control over and focus on them. I have control over what clothes I'm going to wear in the morning. I have control over what food I'm going to put in my mouth. I have control over the hours that I'm going to be working. Am I going to get up at 8, or am I going to get up at 9? Am I going to have my break at 11, or am I going to have my break at 12? Let's find areas in our life that we have that control over. What I'm going to read, if I'm going to journal it, and journal when I'm feeling uncomfortable, because that journaling, drawing will help release those feelings that I spoke about earlier. Sit with the feeling of unknown. We always say, plan for the best, or plan for the worst, but hope for the best. Plan for the worst, but hope for the best. So have a plan, but let's manage our expectations around that. What will happen if we have plan A, we have plan B? What happens if I don't get to that point? What happens if I don't get to that point? So let's always understand a couple of different scenarios and sit with it as well. And the other option is, let's look at life as an adventure. We don't know. You remember those choose your own adventure books that we used to have? So pardon?
I love those books.
We love those books. Why do we love those books? Why do we love
them? It's the unknown.
It's the unknown. We don't know what tomorrow is going to be. We can choose, are we going to go to page 57 or page 85, but we actually don't know. So why is it that the unknown is associated with negativity? The way to reframe is, why can't we associate the unknown with positivity? Why can't we say, hey, this is an adventure. Maybe this will be awesome. Maybe next week I will have lots of sales. Maybe in 3 months' time, I'll be able to book in lots of parties. Surrender.
Yeah, absolutely. I can absolutely relate to what you're saying about how awareness is the beginning of a very different journey. I know for myself, when I was going through some post-traumatic stress, and at the time it was like tunnel vision. All I could see was the fear and the stress and the fear of the unknown. And then I think, like you say, coming to become aware of those feelings and what they are. And then for me, I think beyond that, suddenly when I had this more realistic view in front of me of my situation and my life, I took it all out on paper. I drew, I scribbled, and I was not working in any sort of arts practice at the time. So it was perfect for me to just, my only creative hobby was just to get out whatever I was feeling. I don't think I've ever actually shown anyone my little box of artworks from back then. But I did go through them recently and was like, wow. At the time, I thought they were terrible and they looked so ugly, and they had no form or no life to them. I had a real negative view of them while I made them, but I thought I'll hold on to them because it'll be interesting to see down the track what I think. And sure enough, I looked at them and I actually think they're some of the best artworks I've ever done.
Well done.
Wow, like, because I understand what I was going through back then, and the creativity that came out of me that I just couldn't express now. I'm really glad I did it, and I really feel like anyone who even if they're not in a creative space or a creative headspace, or they don't feel like they're a creative person, to get out your feelings on paper or on a canvas is pretty therapeutic, and it's a very interesting way to help you work through a process.
Absolutely, and it bypasses the verbal filter. When we talk, we're choosing every word that we say. When we draw, when we create, we are bypassing this. 99.9% of the time, we don't know what's going to end up on the piece of paper. We might have an idea, but there's the unknown, there's the mystery of it. And what comes onto the paper is what's meant to be there. That's what your subconscious needed to express. And we accept it.
Yeah. And for me, it was a very interesting journey. I didn't actually go and see an arts therapist, although now looking back, I kind of wish I had. Talking to you, it's like, oh, this would have been so perfect for me back then. But anyway, even the little drawings that I do every day just to sort of get out whatever I was feeling or dealing with, it actually sort of helped me pick up other things that I didn't know that I was dealing with as well, like the loss of a friend that at the time I thought, oh yeah, that's fine, I've dealt with that. 10 years down the track, it came out in my artworks that I keep repeating these same images, and I thought, hang on, that's relating to that person, and everything I'm drawing seems to be relating back to this. So it's very interesting, even just to sit in your own space by yourself and get these sketches out. It can even give you a lot of information about what's going on with yourself.
Absolutely. Can I just explain for one moment what's happening? When we do the art, when something happens to us, like you spoke about a loss of a friend, and I'm sorry to hear that, you're experiencing an emotion at that time. That emotion is stored somewhere in our body. And the way I explain it is that the emotion, when something happens, we don't read an essay, but we have a snapshot in our mind of what's happened. You know, we have you might have a snapshot of your friend. You might have a snapshot of the day that you heard. You might have a snapshot of where you were at the time, and the feelings that you felt at that time are stapled together with that snapshot, and they are stored somewhere. Could be the back of the neck, could be the mind, could be the heart, could be the knees, could be anywhere. What the art therapy does is, using the same visual language that snapshot, the original snapshot, was created in, so using the art, using the visual language, we access that snapshot. We go into that space and we process the emotions that have been stapled with it. The emotions get unstapled, they dissipate, so that you're left with the memory. In all its respect, you're left with the memory, but you're able to incorporate it in the rest of bank of memories without the emotions informing your behavior on a day-to-day level, dysfunctionally or sadly or any other way that you don't want them to be. That's how the art therapy works.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's very interesting. Hence why people at the moment who have just been bombarded with this huge global event where it's thrown everyone's worlds upside down, expressing these feelings and emotions is so important, and getting them out.
That's exactly right.
So how can people sort of incorporate this art or creativity in their life, especially if they're not creative people themselves?
So I always say, if we have done a piece by the end of the art therapy session that is good enough to put up on a wall, like in a lounge room, then I have not done my job properly. It's so not about the art, and I can't express it enough. It's not for arty people. I mean, arty people will enjoy it as well, but it's not only for arty people. The art is another language. Like you have a maths language, you have a Spanish language, you have an art language. That's where the art comes into it. And it's to access a different part of the brain and different parts of the body. So you're feeling jittery in the morning, have a notepad. I've got my papers here. Have a notepad in front of you. Have a couple of simple texters next to you on your bedside table, and draw until the jittery feelings dissipate. And it might take 5 minutes, it might take 10 minutes, but that is your wake up in the morning. That is your download. You're downloading and you're letting go before you step out of bed in the morning. Whilst on the phone, you want to doodle, be doodling. You want to paint, you might choose to paint a wall in your room, whether it's a mural or whether it's a simple block colour. You might decorate a pot plant, something that is going to bring up that creative space. It might be cooking creatively. It could be it could be simply listing all of the things that you've done in the morning or done in the day, and then thinking about what was the emotional space that you were in during that day and drawing it emotionally. Not concrete drawings, but scribble. It might be using the left side of your hand, the left side, your non-dominant hand. That'll take you out of your comfort zone to express what there is, to sort of break the normal automatic response that you have to the world. Let yourself go there in a safe space, and that will help you move from the left side of your brain to the right side of your brain. That repetitive creative process instills a sense of safety because you know what's coming next. You know what to expect. It'll help you see life a little bit differently, and it'll illuminate things for you that you otherwise wouldn't have seen.
Yeah. And I think on one of your videos, you were talking about the use of flowers as well.
The use of flowers as in natural materials.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because something I love this. Often I'll come into an art therapy session and it would be with a group, and they'll say, oh, you know what, I didn't actually get my materials ready today. So that's all right. Step outside. Step outside and look at your garden, look through your balcony, look on the street, and look for things that you've probably walked past a zillion times in the week, and pick up something that's natural. It might be an acorn shell. It could be a leaf. It could be a stick, a twig. Decorate it, wrap it in coloured wool, something that will bring for you to an expression of where you are right here, right now. That's all you need to think about. Where am I right here, right now? And that's enough inspiration to keep you going.
Beautiful. Yep, lovely. So the last question for today, for anyone who's struggling or needs to talk or experiencing a crisis or trauma and they feel really stuck, what are some resources that people can use to reach out?
Can I say contact Indigo Art Therapy?
Definitely, I would.
And that's for online, on site, and in the studio as well. That's in Gardenvale in Victoria, but online it's everywhere. And look, of course, in a crisis situation, you would definitely want to be calling Lifeline. If it's a family violence situation, please call Respect, 1-800-RESPECT. That's a very valuable resource as well. But for those that I would say are gently unsettled, or the worried well, however you might call them, contact Indigo Art Therapy. You can contact us through our website, and we are there and ready.
Fantastic. I think Beyond Blue is another one, especially for men who are struggling. That's a really good resource. And Someone gave me a book when I was a teenager called The Black Dog. And I'd
Yes.
never heard of it, had no understanding about depression or anxiety or anything like that. And it was such an interesting read. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things. It was a very simple, short little book. But for anyone who is new to these emotions, that black dog analogy is definitely a very good one as well.
And for children, there's a gorgeous series, When I Am Happy, When I Am Sad, and it's this little rabbit that from a textile and a sensory point of view, they're actually, the pages are also, they've got a bit of fur on them, a very, very soft, like a peachy feel as well. And it's simple and easy, and they understand there's an acknowledgement of the feelings, and then they move through processes that help them feel better as well. They're a beautiful series of books.
I actually collect kids' books. I have a little section of kids' books in my cupboard. I just love them. So I'm going to have to find that one.
Yes, gorgeous, really gorgeous books.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us, Simona.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me
today. And you take care.